The court calls the state of Texas versus Chris Bloom. The state of Texas brings this theft charge against Chris Bloom after he was found with a luxury watch that matched the serial number of a watch reported missing from Zenbridge Jewelers. Texas Penal Code Section 31.03 states that a person commits theft if he unlawfully appropriates property with the intent to deprive the owner of property. The appropriation of property is unlawful if it is without the owner's effective consent. We will now hear from the parties.
Will you please introduce yourself to the jury?
Yes, so my name is Zenbridge. I am a jeweler.
Tell us a little bit about Zenbridge Jewelers.
Yes, so I am Zenbridge III. My forefathers before me opened up the Zenbridge Jewelry Shop, and I'm a third generation Bridge, and we've had this shop on Main Street for 3 generations, and I took it over 5 years ago.
Okay. What kind of jewelry do y'all sell?
We sell all sorts of jewelry, but really we specialize in luxury watches.
All right. And you understand why we're here today, Mr. Bridge?
I do.
Okay. Why is that?
We're here because I had a watch stolen from my store.
What kind of watch?
It's a Rolex Daytona Rainbow.
Okay. And what is the approximate value of this particular watch?
So this is a rare find. It's a very highly sought after watch. Its value is about $700,000.
Are watches that cost $700,000, is that your typical inventory?
No. This was going to be a showpiece. It was really designed to get people into my store. A lot of my watches that we keep in the store generally are below $5,000, but this was really meant to be a showpiece.
Okay. What does losing something like a $700,000 watch, what does that do to your store?
Huge financial loss. We can't afford to take a hit like that. It would bankrupt us.
Mr. Bridge, I'm going to show you what's been marked as State's Exhibit A. Will you take a look at that for me?
Yeah.
All right, what is State's Exhibit A?
This is the watch that was stolen from me, the Rolex Daytona Rainbow.
All right, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Bridge. Do you know who it was that took the watch?
I do.
All right. Can you point that person out here in the courtroom today?
Yeah, it was that man right there, Chris Bloom.
Have you ever met Mr. Bloom before?
I have.
How do you know Mr. Bloom?
So Mr. Bloom, he's been a regular at my store for a few years now. He's never bought anything, but he likes coming in and sort of window shopping, and it seems like he's interested in watches. And so I've never really said anything because, hey, it's a future customer that might be interested in buying something from me one day.
Okay, so he, just comes into your store, looks around, browses, and leaves?
Generally, yeah. Sometimes we chat a little bit. I get to know him. I've gotten to know him a little bit over the last few years. And generally, he'll come in, stay for around 45 minutes, and then, yeah, leave.
Okay. How often would he come by?
Every few months.
Have you ever, you said that you've talked to him. What did that consist of when you would talk to Mr. Bloom?
Yeah, so we just talk about life. I'd ask him about sort of his dreams and goals and sort of life plans. He's relatively young, so he's got his whole future sort of ahead of him.
What were his goals and plans for the future?
He talked a lot about wanting to attend the University of Lone Star. He really coveted the watches in the store, and he couldn't afford any of them yet. And he talked about going to the University of Lone Star, ending up getting a high-paying job, and eventually being able to own some of the pieces that we had in our store.
How did you feel about Mr. Bloom coming into your store all the time?
I liked him. He was a nice kid. He treated me with respect. He treated my employees with respect. He seemed to have a passion for watches and for jewelry, and I saw him as a future potential customer. And if he ended up getting that high-paying job, I could see him buying some stuff from us, and so it felt worth cultivating that relationship.
And did that change after what happened?
Yeah. That was a betrayal of trust. He stole. I mean, we hadn't had a watch like that really ever in our history, and he stole it. I felt very betrayed, and that changed my opinion of him a lot.
Let's go back for a second and talk about the Rolex Daytona Rainbow that we saw in Exhibit A. How long had that watch been in your store?
We'd had it for a few months before it was stolen. We had it since January.
Before it went missing, where would you keep it? Like in the showroom somewhere, or in the back, or what?
Yeah, so we kept it in the showroom in a glass case in the middle of the showroom, sort of the centerpiece of our collection, because it was meant to sort of draw people to the center.
What date did you notice the watch was missing?
It was April 17th.
When was the last time before that date that Mr. Bloom was in your store?
That same day.
What was he doing that day?
He'd come in, and just like normal, came by to browse watches, and that's what he did.
Was he particularly interested in any individual watch, or was he just looking at all of them?
You know, you come to think of it, there was this one watch, the Paul Rich Endgame.
And taking a look at State's Exhibit B, is this a picture of the Paul Rich Endgame?
Yeah, that's it.
Where in the store did you keep this watch?
In a glass case in the middle of the store.
Was it the same case you kept the Rainbow in, or was
It
this?
was.
It was the same case?
It was the same case.
How much is the Endgame worth?
About $500.
Now, why would you keep a $500 watch in the same case as you keep a $700,000 watch?
Well, it makes a ton of sense. So I think a lot of other jewelers go wrong by organizing their collection by the manufacturer of the watch. But that's not really what the consumer wants. The consumers are looking for jewelry that'll match their fashion accessories. It's jewelry. So I organize it by color. So I've got a corner for all of my blue watches, I've got a corner for all my green watches, another corner for all my red watches, and in the center is all my rainbow watches, all the watches that sort of cover all of the colors. And it makes perfect sense because you've got all the colors on the end of the store, and then in the center you've got all the colors again. It really fits with my Zen mentality for the way that I run my store, and the middle kind of acts like a bridge for all of the other colors.
Did Mr. Bloom do anything different on the day that he came to your store, that last day that you had the Rainbow watch?
You know, now that you mention it, yeah. So on that store, I was back in my office, which is away from the main showroom, and I heard a knock on my door, and it was Chris Bloom. I opened up the door. We started talking a little bit. He told me about sort of how he really liked the Paul Rich Endgame. And I said, you know what, this kid's been coming in here for years. Let's give him a treat. So I told him that he could try on the Endgame. And after he was done trying it on, and he, you know, throughout the years, he'd been talking about how he uses socials and takes pictures and puts them up to socials. And I don't really exactly know what that means, but I figured he could take a picture of himself with the Endgame, put it on his socials or whatever that is. So I gave him a key to the case and told him, hey, go try it on, and when you're done, give it to my assistant Donna, and she'll put it back, and everything would be fine.
And you were talking about the Endgame watch.
Correct.
Did you see Mr. Bloom again that day?
No, I didn't.
Is today the first time you've seen him since?
Yeah, no, this is the first time I'm seeing him since that day.
At what point did you realize the Rainbow watch was missing?
Towards the end of the day, when we take inventory of everything that we have, we move all of the jewelry back into our safe, we noticed that the piece was missing. And I freaked out because, hey, that's a $700,000 watch. That's worth basically the entire rest of my inventory combined. And so I started asking my assistants, my sales associates, hey, where is this watch? We looked everywhere. We couldn't find it. So once I felt like it wasn't in our store, I called the police.
And was the watch eventually found?
It was.
Did you come to learn where the watch was found?
Yeah, I came to learn that Chris Bloom had it.
And where did he have it?
In his backpack.
Thank you for your time, Mr. Bridge. No further questions. Will you please state your name for the record?
My name's Christopher Bloom.
All right, how old are you, Mr. Bloom?
I'm 18.
What do you do?
I just graduated high school. I currently work at Subway.
What do you do at Subway?
I build sandwiches.
Do you understand why we're here today, Mr. Bloom?
I unfortunately do,
And why is that?
because I've been accused of stealing a watch from Zen Bridge.
Now, Mr. Bloom, you understand you have the right under the Constitution of the United States not to testify.
I do.
And you've chosen to testify anyway, is that right?
I have.
Why is that?
Because I've been accused of something I didn't do. I want the jury to know the truth.
Mr. Bloom, you were in the courtroom just a minute ago for Mr. Bridges' testimony, is that correct?
I was.
Did you hear every word?
I did.
Before we talk about what Mr. Bridge said, let's talk about Zen Bridge Jewelers.
Okay.
Have you ever visited Zen Bridge Jewelers before?
Yeah, all the time. I've always liked watches, but I couldn't, my family didn't really have much money. I was a high school student, so I couldn't afford watches. So I would go and I would just kind of browse around, look at the watches, think about what I one day may be able to buy.
Did you ever talk to Zen Bridge, Mr. Bridge himself?
I did.
What were the substance of those conversations?
I can't really say I talked much. Mr. Bridge did most of the talking. He kind of viewed me as a therapist, I think. He was talking about how much pressure he was under since he took over the store, how hard it's been to make the store do good. He even said one time and he'd be better off taking the insurance money than running the store.
Were you in Zen Bridge Jewelers on the date in question?
I was.
What else had you done that day?
Yeah, so I had a big English test, and I thought I did well. I wanted to go to the University of Lone Star. I still want to go to the University of Lone Star, and it was kind of a big test. I did well, and then kind of as a treat, I said, look, after school I went and kind of checked out the watches
At Zen Bridge Jewelers.
at Zen Bridge.
Okay. How long were you there at the jewelry store?
Probably 45 minutes.
Did you talk to Mr. Bridge on that day?
I did. I did.
Did he say anything to you?
Yeah, it was like I said, I took an English test, so it was I was already in a good mood, and I thought I kind of hit the lottery. I'd been talking to Mr. Bridge. I mentioned, he kind of treated me like his therapist. We'd become what I thought were friends. And he said, I kind of shared that I had done well in my English test, and he said, as a treat, I'm going to give you a watch. Just it seemed like my lucky day.
Now, what watch did he say he was going to give you?
We didn't say a specific watch. And so the way that the jewelry store is organized is by color. And so I personally like the blue watches. So I would kind of hang out over here and look at the blue watches. The rainbow watches were in the middle. He said it's the watch in the very middle of the rainbow case, and then he gave me the key.
And so he didn't call it a specific name. He just said the one that looks like a rainbow.
Well, they all looked like rainbow, but he said it was the one in the middle of the rainbow case, kind of the centerpiece.
Okay. How did he give it to you?
Well, he handed me the key and he told me to go get it.
All right. I'm going to show you what's been marked as and entered into evidence as State's Exhibit A. We saw this earlier. Do you recognize this as the watch Mr. Bridge gave you?
That was the watch that was in the center of the rainbow case, yes.
All right. Prior to the date alleged for this offense, had you ever seen this watch before?
I hadn't. Like I said, I like the blue watches, so I typically hung out there. I hadn't really looked at the rainbow watch, but I wasn't, Mr. Bridge said he was going to give me a watch. I wasn't going to, he can have a blue one instead.
You heard what Mr. Bridge testified to earlier. What's your response to that testimony?
It's hurtful. I don't understand why he's doing what he's doing. If he regretted giving me the watch, all he had to do was call me. I would have brought it back. I considered us friends. I don't get it. I feel hurt.
When or at what point did you figure out that the watch had been reported stolen?
Not till the police showed up at my house.
And at that time, did they had the search warrant?
They did. It was probably a few days, maybe a week after, he gave me the watch.
And when they show up at your house with a search warrant, what are your emotions? Are you in shock or what?
Yeah, I didn't understand. Like, I kept saying, he gave me the watch. What is happening? And nobody would give me. I still don't understand. I don't get it.
Thank you, Mr. Bloom. We'll pass the witness.
Now it's your turn to decide. Did Chris Bloom really steal this watch, or is Zen Bridge lying? Have fun in the deliberation room.